let's start working on the fingers. We'll move back to our top view. Let's grab our bone tools. Alright, so there are a few important things to keep in mind about the fingers. For one, of course, we want to make sure we're placing our pivots in the right spot. It may seem pretty basic, but it's very easy to run into some weird deformation simply because we haven't considered where our pivot should be. We'll also learn how to hold volume very well in the fingers deform. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that we don't want to forget about our metacarpals, another very important bone for hand deformations. So this is going to look really nice when it's all finished. Let's go ahead and get started. We'll start by working from the index to the pinky, and then we'll go in and end at the thumb. Let's go ahead and check our width and height. Most certainly want to bring these down. I'll go ahead and set the width and height to 1. And we'll get started. So starting at the index finger, we'll go ahead and create the metacarpal, and we'll start the root of the index finger right at this edge loop here before we actually get into the index finger's geometry. And now we'll go ahead and end the chain at the tip. Remember, we can segment this using the refine tool. So that's another really fun tool there. But before we do that, let's go ahead and create the other bone objects. Now if we were to just go ahead and move on to the middle finger, again, it's going to be the same process. We'll go ahead and create the metacarpal, and we'll end at the tip of the finger. Let's go ahead and now work on our ring finger next. And then the pinky. Great. And now we can go ahead and work on the thumb. So we'll want to place this closer to the center of the palm. That's going to be where the first joint should be placed. And now we'll go ahead and create our next bone object. And now we'll want this to angle back down the thumb here. So we'll go ahead and create our next bone right at the very end of the thumb, and we'll go ahead and right click. Alright, great. So now that all of these are in place, remember again we can go ahead and start to segment our chain using refine. Let's go ahead and start to work with that. And we'll work with the index finger first. So here's the root of our index finger, not considering the metacarpal, of course. You can see where this next edge line is. Let's go ahead and place a bone there. And that way, when we rotate from here, we can hold some really nice volume around the knuckles. Alright, so we'll now go ahead and segment the same way. We're looking at our edge loops, and we'll place our next bone object at the edge loop before the next segment, and on the edge loop that starts the next segment. We'll do the same thing now for the last section of the finger. Just looking at the edge loop. Beautiful. So that's how we'll segment the others. When we get to the middle finger, it's the same way. Here's the root, so we'll look at the next edge loop, and we'll segment there. So go ahead and do the same thing for the next section. So we've managed to segment these. That looks good. Let's go to the ring finger and do the same thing. So by doubling these up, when they start to rotate, we'll be able to hold some really nice volume, and we'll make sure that when we drive the rotation of these bones, we're only controlling the rotation of one, but then we can use wire parameters to control the rotation of the other so that we don't have to have a control for each bone here. So by the end of this, again, volume is going to look very nice. Let's go ahead and work with the pinky. Let's go ahead and do the same thing here. Great. Alright, so now we can go ahead and move to the thumb. So here for the thumb, we don't have to segment this piece here after our root. So we'll just go ahead and make sure to segment at the last section of the thumb. Alright, let's go ahead and exit refine mode. Let's go ahead and look for any bones that might need to be adjusted in bone edit mode. So I'll go ahead and use that. Let's make sure our move tool is set to local. We'll just start to slide a few of these back. You can see that that will open up the bone a bit more as well. Okay, great. So that's looking good. Let's go ahead and take a look at the middle finger. We'll go ahead and just bring that back a bit more. Great. Let's go to the ring finger. That needs to be adjusted a bit. Let's go ahead and slide the root of the midsection back, and then the following bone. Let's do the same thing for the next set of bones. All right, I'd say that's going to work out well. Let's go ahead and take a look at the pinky. So again, we can take the root here and go ahead and slide that back. Do the same thing for the bone that follows. Let's take a look at the next section. Go ahead and slide that back a bit. That looks good. We need to do that once more. And now we'll go ahead and take a close look at the thumb, see how that looks. Let's do the same thing. Just go ahead and slide this bone object back. And I'd say we're good to go for now. So now it's time to just go in and kind of lift these bones up and then place them inside of the hand. So we'll move over to our perspective view, and let's go ahead and grab each metacarpal. Okay, great. We'll go ahead and start lifting these up. I'll go ahead and switch this to world mode just to make it easier on us. We'll just make sure that they're placed nicely inside of the hand. Now when we're placing our bone objects, we want to make sure that the bone is not quite at the center of the finger, but just a little bit higher, and that's going to give us some really nice creasing when the fingers curl. So we'll just make sure that that is accurate. So I'm looking at the index. I'll go ahead and bring that up just a little bit more. Let's take a look at the next finger, the midsection. We might want to just deselect and start to select these and modify them separately. You can see here for the middle finger, we actually need to translate this bone up a bit more. All right, looking at the ring finger, looks like we need to actually rotate the root down. Let's go ahead and grab that root bone there. Let's grab our rotate tool. We'll make sure it's set to gimbal, and we'll just go ahead and rotate the chain down so it fits nicely inside of the finger. Great. And let's go ahead and take a look at the pinky. So here, we'll need to go ahead and just translate it down a bit more, and we most certainly need to rotate it down. That might be a good idea. Let's go ahead and grab our rotate gizmo and just go ahead and make sure that this is placed properly. This is looking nice. All right, I might actually go ahead and grab the metacarpal again of the pinky and just go ahead and just drop that down a little bit more, and then maybe go back to its root, and then go ahead and just rotate up. And by root, of course, I'm referring to the following bone object here. It's the main bone of the pinky. We just want to make sure that that is oriented properly. So all of these look pretty good except for the thumb, of course. Let's go ahead and adjust this. Now what I'd like to do here is make sure we have some really clean rotation. So instead of rotating this bone object down, we could go ahead and first translate it down, and then we can go to the next section here. Go ahead and choose bone edit mode and just go ahead and just drop that down, and I'll actually double click to make sure we're grabbing the entire segment, so we can go ahead and drop the entire chain down. That looks good. Might want to bring it down just a little bit more. Alright, that's much better. I'll go ahead and turn off bone edit mode, and we'll start to adjust the orientation. Just grabbing this bone object here and just rotating that down. We'll go ahead and rotate it over in the Z-axis. And it looks like there's a little bit of twisting at the end of the chain. So I might just go ahead and select that and just take a look. Okay. Actually, this looks really nice. It's just probably a visual thing, but I think everything is flowing very well. So I'd like to go to the bone before it, and I would like to add a bit more of a twist here to this chain, just to make sure that when we start to rotate this bone, we get some really nice bending, so it doesn't look weird when we rotate. So we can do that. If we need to, we can go in and kind of twist our bone objects just to make sure that we get some ideal rotation. Great, so we're just about finished here. It is a refinement process. We do need to go back every once in a while and just go ahead and check to make sure we have our bones in the right spot. It's best to take care of this now before we get to skinning. So I'll just go ahead and start to refine this even more, just using local mode and bone edit mode to kind of slide these down the finger a bit more. Great. And that will help us save a lot of time so that we don't have to redo this process. Okay, so just double checking everything else. Great. Alrighty, well, now that those objects are in place, it's a good time to just go ahead and rename them. I'll go ahead and turn off bone edit mode. And we can always work with the thumb first. So this object will be named bone_L thumb A01. And we'll name the others alphabetically. When we get to the nub, that's going to be, of course, BN end thumb. All right, so you don't necessarily have to rename this one alphabetically. Just go ahead and put the BN end, and you'll be good to go. So let's go ahead and rename the others. So instead of naming this metacarpal, again, we'll just go ahead and name all of these alphabetically. This will be A, the following will be B, C, and so on. I'll pause the video and rename the others. All right, so now that each finger has been renamed, we only have a few more steps. We want to go in and add these to our bones layer. But before that, let's go ahead and take each metacarpal. Let's go ahead and have all of these linked back to our hand bone. All right, great. We'll press page up just to make sure we have linked to the correct object. And now going back to those objects, we'll go ahead and press Control Page down, and now we can freeze their transforms. All right, great. So our last step will be to work on layers. So this is actually really simple. Let's go ahead and open up our Layer Manager, and we'll go in and deselect the nub object. Alt, and go ahead and click on those, because the others are going to be stored in our bones layer. Alright, so now we can go through and grab those nubs and add those to the hidden layer, and that'll be it for this lesson. In the next lesson, we're ready to mirror our arm rig.